One of my favorite things to do when it comes to video games, besides trying to solve mysteries or discover odd things, is to reimagine how the story could have taken place. We have a concrete structure in our head for how the story goes in so many of our favorite games. But I always come back to that question, what if? What if something happened differently? How would changing one event derail the story we know and love? Well, in this video, we're going to do things a bit out of order, by bringing the scariest and strangest parts of Ocarina of Time to the immediate beginning of the game. What if Bongo Bongo took refuge in the Deku Tree, and not the Shadow Temple? Videos like this require a lot of prep work, so I want to thank sponsors like Raid Shadow Legends for enabling me to continue nerding out about games on YouTube. Raid is a brand new RPG title on mobile that's totally free to play. Dive into an amazing storyline, giant boss fights, player versus player combat, and hundreds of different champions to customize to your liking. And I have to say, for a mobile game, the graphics are pretty darn impressive. And I mean that. You don't normally get this level of detail on mobile. Just take a look at these champions. Raid's special launch tournament is happening right now, and it's getting big pretty darn fast. To join the fray, go to the description of this video and download Raid only through my special link to get 50,000 silver immediately. And here's the neat part. You'll be automatically entered into their special launch tournament, where you can compete with other players for awesome in-game prizes and even physical prizes, like collection edition figurines, power banks, t-shirts, and more. So click my link in the description below to get started. And I want to thank Raid for sponsoring this video and helping me produce even more nostalgic gaming content. So before diving into What If Land, first let's set the stage. Bongo Bongo was once sealed within the well in Kakariko Village. As I'm sure most of you know, Impa had sealed this shadowy being prior to the events of Ocarina of Time. However, the darkness that Ganondorf cast across the land strengthened the sealed spirit and allowed it to escape. During this process, Bongo Bongo ravished Kakariko Village, setting it aflame. Impa once again stood up against the beast and was attempting to seal it as it retreated into the Shadow Temple. But at that moment, anything could have really happened. To me, it was always odd when Bongo Bongo ended up in the Shadow Temple when it just broke out of a place that was exactly the same. Sheik specifically states that Impa has gone to the Shadow Temple to seal it again, which means that Bongo Bongo chose to go there prior to anything happening. That alone is pretty strange, but let's rewind a bit. What if Bongo Bongo had a change of plans? Instead of receding into a room where it would literally do no further harm to anyone, what if it went outwards? Out across the fields of Hyrule and found its way into Kokiri Forest, and then deeper, into the core of the Deku Tree. To some degree, these environments are similar. The chambers of Bongo Bongo and Queen Goma are both dark and underground, far beneath the surface by quite a ways. Now obviously, this probably wouldn't do a whole lot in terms of the Adult Link timeline. The Deku Tree is already dead. But let's change the story up a bit, and say this event took place in the Child timeline, right before the game began. So Link is waking up from another bad dream, and miles away Kakariko Village is still recovering from the flames from Bongo Bongo ravaging the land. Perhaps due to Zelda and Impa not being there to intervene, that's why Bongo Bongo retreated away from its place of captivity and crept to another distant but equally dark place. As Link wakes up and goes about his normal beginning of the game routine, darkness has been festering in the Deku Tree, and that is why Link is summoned. However, the Deku Tree's curse is actually what attracted the appetite of a new evil, so the situation is far worse than it normally would have been. Perhaps if Ganondorf's darkness hadn't already began affecting the forest, Bongo Bongo would have looked elsewhere. As Link steps up to the plate to accept the challenge, he has no idea what lurks within, and I think this would affect the story severely for a lot of different reasons. Psychologically, Link has zero experience across the board. As Ocarina of Time progresses, he's introduced to new dangers and creatures that he must overcome, but everything he faces at the start of the game is still rooted in the natural world. Sure, he encounters giant skull-faced spiders within the tree, which would definitely be absolutely terrifying, but not in a hopeless kind of way. If it's alive, it can be slain. But if Link is up against something he can't comprehend yet, as in creatures from beyond the grave fresh out of the gate, I feel like he'd really have to muster up that Triforce of courage to push forward. At least with Stallchild, he had an entire dungeon to go through prior to being introduced to these foul beings that prowl Hyrule Field at night. And even then, if he plays his cards right, he might not even encounter them, since it's possible to always reach his destinations at first during daylight. So, back in the Deku Tree, Link steps right in to see creatures manifested from darkness. Depending on what you believe, whether Redeads are actual corpses, or dark magic that animated clay, a pack of Redeads could be staring down Link right away. The first part of his adventure is met with a blood-curdling scream, as a creature draws near to feed on him. This entire area becomes interesting to traverse and navigate because wallmasters prowl these hallowed interiors. Hanging from the top of the Deku Tree, these creatures would snipe our hero as he attempted to scale the interior, making things more difficult. As Link progressed through these tunnels, battling the normal foes and also the ones brought upon by the darkness, he'd eventually be jumped by a Stalfos more than likely. I imagine the influx of dark energy would draw Stalfos to these areas, as the general protection of the Deku Tree would be extremely taxed. Battling a Stalfos or two this early on, when they normally wouldn't be encountered until the Forest Temple, might be a bit harsh on our newfound hero. But if he somehow survived their increased damage, he could secure necessary equipment before taking the plunge, past the Redeads, and into an area that is far worse. The Lair of the Dead Hand. Imagine jumping down through giant spiderwebs only to enter a room littered with hands trying to grab you. To top things off, the darkness has infected the water, turning it into a poisonous state, similar to the water that is sometimes present in dark areas. I feel like with the bottom of the well, Link had already seen some crap in his days, and at least with that, you can see what you're getting into with the hands, having to initiate combat by drawing close to one. Landing in a room full of hands that immediately grab your head as a dark, slug-like entity digs out of the floor would be one of the most abrupt, startling experiences for a child. Fun fact though, the hands of a dead hand can't actually hold you if you're in water. As soon as the animation starts, it stops. Just thought I'd throw that out there. But that doesn't mean dead hand can't hurt you when you're in water. Clearing dead hand in this room becomes a lot more challenging due to the variance in height, and assuming the water is poisonous. If Link manages to do so, he'll be able to move on. But this raises another question. Would any of the Deku scrubs in the area actually stick around if the reanimated dead were now wandering the halls of the tree? Without the Deku scrubs, technically Link would have trouble opening the door at the end of the dungeon, since the correct combination of defeating them is what enables him to move to the boss room. If he somehow did manage to get past this point, a brutal challenge awaits him. Fighting Bongo Bongo alone within the Deku Tree would be bothersome enough for a child, but fighting Goma and Bongo Bongo at the same time, yikes. Entering this room and seeing two glowing eyes would be an interesting turn of events. Bongo Bongo and Goma honestly shouldn't have any quarrels with each other, as they're both fueling off the same evil energy. Queen Goma is a manifestation of the curse that Ganondorf put upon the Deku Tree, while Bongo Bongo escaped their imprisonment by feeding off the dark energy that Ganondorf spread across the land. If anything, Bongo Bongo would have been drawn to Goma and it would have amplified its powers. It's unknown if the giant drum in the Shadow Temple was created through Bongo Bongo's dark energy, or if it was always there. But that means our young child could either be stepping onto the same drum-based terrain, or tackling these monsters within Goma's normal chambers. If the drum was a manifestation of dark energy, I wouldn't be surprised if Goma's room transformed to represent the lair of Bongo Bongo in some regards. Since Link would have retrieved the slingshot within the Deku Tree, he'd still be able to use it to stun Bongo Bongo's hands. Even doing so spawns Deku Seeds surprisingly, even though Child Link isn't normally supposed to encounter Bongo Bongo. Clearing Bongo Bongo with the Kakiri sword would take some time, and the fight would be pretty difficult since Link would have to retreat to the grass in hopes of healing after taking damage, as Bongo Bongo can clear hearts out easily. Not to mention, while dealing with this drumming foe, Goma would be sneaking around waiting to strike, and sending her minions after Link as well. It might be wise to clear out Goma first, since she only has 10 health, compared to Bongo Bongo's 36. But that's only if Link can successfully avoid Bongo Bongo's hands in the process, as getting caught can certainly lead to death. If Link plays his cards right, although difficult, there's a chance he would prevail, and nullify his need to go to the Shadow Temple later on in his quest. The Deku Tree would of course still die, or may have even died sooner while Link was inside him. Depending on what happens might make retrieving the Kakiri's Emerald a bit more difficult for Link, since it's unsure where the Emerald was actually stored. But with the clearing of this dungeon, Link would be ready for the rest of his adventure, as a big portion of its stress was already put upon him. Tossed amidst a creepy dungeon full of spiders, zombies, and the spirits of the dead, I'm sure anything else coming his way certainly wouldn't shock him as much. Bongo Bongo taking refuge in the Deku Tree would certainly shake up the timeline, but beyond that point, things would progress normally. It does put a neat twist on the beginning of the game though. But now that I've shared all that, what do you think about this concept? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And with that, Thanks for tuning in for this dark reimagining. Perhaps you'll enjoy some of these thought-provoking videos. Thanks for watching, guys and gals, and until my next video, cheers.